Do you have migraines after eating dairy? Or do you experience bloating after having gluten? If you constantly have these reactions to certain foods, you might have a food intolerance. Not to be confused with a food allergy. These are two different conditions. In our program today, we'll explain the difference from identifying the causes to knowing the symptoms and how to deal with these conditions. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Food intolerances are actually more common than you think. Almost everyone has experienced a bad reaction to food. Our guests are here today to help us understand this better. With us is Dr. Angelo Lozada. He's a gastroenterologist and hepatologist from the Makati Medical Center. We're also joined by Dr. Carolyn Gloria, a pediatric and adult allergist from the Asian Hospital and Medical Center. Thank you both for joining us. Now, unlike a food allergy, a food intolerance is generally not life-threatening, but it can be hard to tell the difference between the two. Now, Dr. Jello, what exactly is food intolerance and what is a food allergy?
Well, when you say food intolerance, that is actually more of a digestive system response, wherein there is the inability of the body to process certain food materials or for certain foodstuffs. So there's actually antigens in food, and these may cause symptoms in a person. And when we say intolerance, this is actually dose dependent. So it actually depends on the amount of food that one would eat versus a food allergy, wherein even a small dose can actually cause or trigger immune reaction. So you can have systemic symptoms like rashes, severe symptoms, severe abdominal pain, and it's really related to that.
Now, Dr. Carol, there could be similar symptoms to an allergic reaction too. Now, how can we differentiate them then?
The symptoms, like what you said, could range from mild to severe. And the amount, even a small amount of that food that you're allergic to could cause problems. So with food intolerance, as what Dr. Jello said, that it is dose dependent. With food allergy, even a dust of peanut could cause you a severe or allergic explosive reaction. Wherein in food intolerance, you could, in some people, could tolerate one or two strawberries and patient would not have any problems. But when you take an entire bowl of strawberries, the patient would have like redness of the lips or irritation of the skin around the lips. It is like alcohol, right? Alcohol, patient would have flushing on it, especially of the Asian descent. And that is food intolerance. That is not food allergies. Food allergies, the most common are 8, which includes peanut, egg, wheat, milk, and dairy foods such as ice cream. There's also soy, fish, shellfish, and tree nuts. Those are the 8 most common food allergies in kids and in adults.
Okay, that's good, Dr. Carol, that you mentioned some examples, especially with the alcohol. Marami sa atin who think that they become flush or red na allergic sila sa alcohol. Yung pala, intolerant sila with alcohol. So with that, can we discuss the triggers that these two conditions have? A food intolerance as opposed to an allergic reaction? And can you explain the different causes?
So our immune system, to make it simple, it's supposed to fight infection. So when you partake food, the patient who is allergic to it thinks it is something bad. It kind of reacts in a different way, causing the allergy cells to break, release histamine, and causes all those itchiness, swelling of particular body organs. With food intolerance, it is non-immunologic in nature, and it's non-allergic. So it sometimes have a different pathway in inducing some histamine reactions. Like there are some fruits that they have biogenic amines in it. Like when you take it, it's like taking histamine already. not through the immune system response. So that's why there's redness, because histamine can cause redness as well.
Okay. Now, Dr. Carol, so masasabi nyo kaya na ang food allergies are then more dangerous or more serious than food intolerances?
Yes, because to prevent food allergy, you have to avoid that food. It might be easier said than done, but that's what we have to do. You have to really avoid it, because a while ago I told you, even a small amount, a trace amount of it could give you mild symptoms ranging to explosive anaphylaxis or even death if you're not careful with it.
Later in the show, we'll explain the tests you need in order to determine whether you have allergies or a food intolerance. Now, when you have a food intolerance, symptoms usually begin within a few hours of eating that specific food. But they can still be delayed by up to 48 hours and can last for days even. Now, Dr. Jello, what are these symptoms that our viewers should look out for?
Yes, when you have a food intolerance, you usually have experience of gastrointestinal symptoms. So one would experience like bloatedness. You could have gassiness, abdominal cramps, abdominal pain. You may also have headaches as well as irritability. So these are the common symptoms of a food intolerance.
Okay. Now, Dr. Carol, dun sa sinabi ni Dr. Jero, let's compare this naman to common allergic reactions. So what are some of the symptoms of this naman?
The symptoms of food allergies, the onset could be minutes up to an hour. The symptoms could vary every episode. So your episode right now might be mild. We don't know if your second episode will be bad, severe, or mild again. And then per person, it also could change from mild to severe. Unlike food intolerance, wherein it's always GI tract. With our food allergies, there is a myriad of symptoms just because it affects a lot of our organ systems. And again, we really have to be careful, because with food allergy, it could be life-threatening.
Now, if you think you have a food intolerance, there are certain foods that you should eliminate first. Now, Dr. Jello, what are some of these foods that are more commonly associated with food intolerance?
So we have what we call the common triggers, the common foods that can cause intolerance, and these are usually your milk, eggs, tree nuts, anything to do with shrimp, fish, wheat, as well as soybeans. So these are some of the common foods that one should avoid when they have food intolerance. So it's really more of a test and see if they have abdominal symptoms or if they experience any kind of symptoms after eating these certain kinds of foods.
Now, some of the two most common intolerances are also being lactose intolerant and gluten intolerant. Actually, 65% of the world's population have trouble digesting dairy. Dr. Jello, why do people have this reaction to lactose? How does lactose intolerance happen? And for those that experience this, should they avoid dairy altogether, or are there other options?
Well, when you have lactose intolerance, the body lacks a certain chemical. It's an enzyme that inhibits a person from completely digesting milk products. So you have lactose intolerance. Some people, when we say intolerance, it's really dose dependent. So some people can actually tolerate taking in milk, but only up to a certain level. So it's really more of finding out how much you can tolerate or how much your body can take.
Now, the other common intolerance also is gluten intolerance. Dr. Jello, bakit naman ito nangyayari?
There are proteins also in certain cereals like rye and wheat and barley. And these proteins can actually cause the pain and bloating. So it irritates your digestive tract. And these proteins can cause these symptoms. So they act as like antigens, which cause the irritation of your digestive tract.
With all the diets available now na gluten-free, marami na ngayong options to be gluten-free, With those with the gluten intolerance, should they abide by following everything that is gluten-free?
Gluten-free sensitive, because wheat, it can be one of the most common food allergens that we could have. And if you test sensitive to that and you are having symptoms when you are partaking that gluten, then it is advisable for you to avoid it altogether, so that then you don't have symptoms, be it digestive or nausea, vomiting, or anything else. So my advice would be to avoid gluten altogether.
So, is it an allergy or is it a food intolerance? We'll discuss how to diagnose this after a short break. We're your connection to healthcare. Stay with us right here on CNN Philippines. A food intolerance is a digestive system response. A food allergy is an immune system response. Two different conditions which can easily be confused. Our guests will explain the tests you need to know. This is MedTalk Health Talk, where your health comes first. Now, I'll start first with Dr. Jello. What's the best way to diagnose a food intolerance?
Well, the best way to diagnose the food intolerance is to actually just try it. There's really no specific test that one can do, but it's just a matter of trial and error. When you repeatedly eat a certain kind of food and it causes irritation in your gut, then one should suspect that he has food intolerance.
Okay, now your doctor may recommend tests to rule out allergies. Dr. Carol, what are some of these tests?
So we have two tests to determine if a person would have allergies. One is skin testing, wherein we prick a food that is in that prick device, and we put it on your arms. A positive test would appear red, bumpy, like a mosquito bite on the area where that food was placed, food allergen was placed. And then, if that's positive, it means you're allergic to that food. Another test would be blood test. We test the protein called IgE, and IgE, or immunoglobulin E, is that protein that the body makes whenever you're allergic to that particular food. So if that IgE is elevated, then it means you're allergic to that.
Now, once you've determined your food intolerance, what are the treatments available? Dr. Jello, can one get over a food intolerance?
I think one can just manage food intolerance. It's when somebody is intolerant to a certain kind of food, then that's how your body is. That's how your body really is. It's just taking in the right amount, just the right amount of food, and seeing how much you can tolerate. So it's not curable. It's something that you have to live with.
Okay, what's your suggestion, Dr. Jello, to those who have intolerances, let's say, to seafood, to shrimps, and especially those who have intolerances to alcohol? A lot of people believe that if they keep on taking these things, that eventually they will be sensitized to it, they will have less reactions to it. What is your take on this?
Well, it depends on the type of the sensitization, no? Because eventually, a person will still develop these reactions to, these certain foodstuffs. So it's a matter of really just finding out how much you can take. Maybe eventually you can increase your tolerance to these food materials, but it will only reach up to a certain point. And it's also important that one should start reading food labels, and it's important also to make a food diary. It's important that one would list down what they ate and what they probably felt a few hours after. So these are some of the important things that one should do.
Now, there are also a few ways to lessen the likelihood of developing intolerances. Small lifestyle changes can help with this. Dr. Carol, can you give us some tips in order to help prevent this?
For food allergy, what we could prevent it for is like unclear, like breastfeeding or when you're pregnant, are you supposed to avoid these foods? Literature says that it is unclear if you should avoid certain foods or not, and if that would be beneficial to the baby. They are letting the mommies eat whatever they can, and during lactation, that they could also not restrict their food because it would be detrimental to the nutrition of their baby. So all in all, there are no hard evidence on restrictions to diet to prevent any allergies during breastfeeding and lactation.
Managing food intolerances. We'll talk about the many ways when we return. Keep it here on CNN Philippines. Welcome back to the program. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. While there is currently no cure for a food intolerance, nowadays there are many alternatives to a more health-conscious lifestyle. And this makes managing food intolerances that much easier. Dr. Jello, what are some tips in order to manage a food intolerance?
I think the best way to manage food intolerance is to prepare your own food. Preparing your own food means you actually know what is inside the food that you eat. Because when you eat out, there are certain things that may be added to the food, like MSG is an example that one may be intolerant to. There might be some gluten. It may contain some milk, and these can cause severe symptoms.
And Dr. Carol, can you share some suggestions to further manage food intolerance?
So for food intolerance, like what Dr. Jello said, it depends on the dose. So you should know what dose would be good for you and not. With regard to food allergy, you really have to avoid what you're allergic to. And you should know when to get help when you're having a reaction. And for allergies, because it has the tendency to have severe reaction, you should carry an epinephrine auto-injector if your doctor prescribed you one. And it is also safe, and I also want to reiterate what Dr. Jello said about preparing safe meals at home. Less parties would be nicer so that then you won't have any problems of having symptoms to whatever they're gonna serve you.
Okay, very good advice. Now, Dr. Jello, what are some of the good substitutes for those who are lactose and gluten intolerant?
You can actually take supplements so that you will be able to digest milk products. So you can take digestive enzymes, which can help you digest milk products easily. And with regards to gluten, it's just really avoiding all of these gluten-containing food materials. So it's widely available now. Gluten-free preparations, gluten-free foods.
And these changes in your diet will not only help manage your intolerance, but will increase your overall well-being. Thank you for joining us today, gastroenterologist and hepatologist Dr. Angelo Lozada, and allergist and immunologist Dr. Carolyn Gloria. We appreciate your time. Our goal here on the program is to help you better understand the care you need and deserve. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. Join us again next time on MedTalk Health Talk. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you for watching CNN Philippines.